Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, said, I see that you observe days and months and seasons and years. I am afraid I have labored over you in vain. Now here we are, this crowded week of observing these different days. This is the season, and naturally it's the year. What did Paul give to the world? What he gave to the world is this, that the Spirit of God and the human imagination are one. He said, we did not receive the spirit of the world, but the Spirit which is from God, that we may understand the gifts bestowed upon us by God. Here is the one that became the many, that the many may become the one. For one must be all, and comprehend within itself all things, both small and great. Everything in the world, all that I behold, though it appears without, it is within, in my imagination, of which this world of mortality is but a shadow. So when we are told, if I be lifted up, I will lift all men and draw all men unto me. Now we are told he is lifted up. Therefore all men are already redeemed. But they have to experience it within themselves. They are already redeemed. But in this world of mortality, this must be now, I would say, repeated within the individual. For he must contain and experience all within himself. There is only God in this world. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So let me share with you a story that was given to me last Friday night. This lady's husband's name is Ray. When I use the word Ray, I am speaking of her husband. She said, last year, Ray said to me, it's going to cost $1,000 to put on a roof, a new roof. We need the roof, but it'll cost $1,000. She didn't say they could not afford it. She just said, I saw the new roof. Right then and there, I saw the new roof. Then she said, I was working at my sewing machine. It's an old one, but it was adequate. It did the job. But I would like a new one, she said. And so I imagined a new one. There was the old one, but I imagined the new one. Then I was putting away my tape recorder, and I felt how heavy this thing is. I would like a new, lightweight one. I put the old one away, the heavy one, but I thought I would like a new one that is light of weight. So I put it away, the new one that was light of weight. Then she said, Ray said to me, my new shoes hurt. He just bought them and they were hurting. Well, I wanted him to have shoes that did not hurt. That in my imagination. All this was last year. Then came the turn of the calendar year, and we had a robbery. No, they didn't steal the roof, but they took the other movable objects. And this past week I got a settlement from the insurance company, pardon me, for $2,050 odd. I now have my nice new sewing machine. I have my nice lightweight tape recording. Ray's shoes do not hurt. And there is money for the roof and much, much, much left over. Now, who instigated the robbery? Now on Friday you will hear, if you go to service, there are 7 words on the cross. 3 taken from Luke, 3 from John, and 1 from Matthew and Mark. It's the same one from Matthew and Mark, which is the 4th one. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? That's the one taken from these 2 Gospels. But the first one used on the cross is from Luke. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Everything is moving under compulsion. No one sees the invisible causation. No one sees the invisible imaginal acts that is putting pressure upon everyone who is bent in a certain direction to perform the needed act to produce the imaginal act that is completely unseen by the world. Here, every natural act, natural effect, has a spiritual cause and not a natural. A natural cause only seems. It is a delusion of the fading vegetable memory. Now, in her letter to me, she said, these things I remember. They were all last year, but I remember them. In her case, she is blessed that she could remember when Ray said to her, it's going to cost $1,000 to put on the new roof, and I saw the new roof. Even at the moment, maybe we thought we could not now afford the new roof. When I used my sewing machine, it was adequate, it was good, it did the job, but I would like a new one, and I saw a new one. And when I put away my tape recording, it's all right, it was adequate, but it was heavy when I put it away. I thought, I've seen all these nice, new, lightweight ones, and I would like a nice, lightweight one, good one. Now she said, I have all of them. I have my nice, new, lightweight, my new machine, Ray's shoes, they do not hurt, and the roof will be a new one. The money is there, and much left over. So the first cry on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They're all asleep, moving under compulsion. And men and women, unwittingly, most of them, some wittingly, are setting the whole thing in motion. And they're simply moved. So someone given to the feeling of getting something for nothing, so he takes the tape recorder. If he sells it for anything, that's profit. It costs him nothing. No matter what it cost her, whatever he could get for it, that was sheer profit. If he goes out and he finds something that he stole for $100, and he could move it quickly for $15, and one gets a bargain, he made $15. It cost him nothing. His investment was nothing. And there are those in the world who think that way. They're all passing through the furnaces. So the first word on the cross, a word on the cross does not mean a single word. It's a completed thought. So the shortest word is, I thirst. But there are 2 words. Then the next one from John is, it is finished. There are 3 words. All right. Still, it is 1 word when you take the 7 words. So the first word is from Luke. Father, forgive them, they know not what they do. And then comes Luke's second, then comes John's first, then comes Matthew and Mark, and then comes two from John, and then Luke completes it. Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. But when he said, and this little punctuation mark has been pushed around in the second word on the cross, which is from Luke, and the thief turns to him and asks him to have mercy on him. And he said, behold, I say unto you, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. Well, you could alter the punctuation mark and put the comma after today. But no, leave it just as it is. Behold, I say unto you, today thou shalt be with me in paradise. This is now resurrection. And when I am lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. For all things are in my own wonderful human imagination. And I am all imagination. So when I am lifted up, I draw all. At the very moment, I draw them all with me. But they individually must have the experience that I have had. But they are already redeemed because I took them up with me. Because all things exist in the human imagination. And anyone who is resurrected, well, he can't be resurrected and leave behind him any part of himself. So the whole vast world is raised up with him. I am telling from experience, the heavenly chorus sing when this thing took place. They sing the fall, actual fall into division, and the resurrection into unity. They sing it out. And then the regeneration through resurrection from the dead. They actually sing it out. And the words, it is finished, I heard it, but I didn't sing it. The heavenly chorus sang it. When I walked by and everyone was made perfect as I was perfect. And then at the very end, the chorus sang out, it is finished. That was the sixth word on the cross. And the last one is when this garment comes off. And that is the 31st Psalm, the 5th verse. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. Complete the verse. Thou hast redeemed me, O Lord, faithful God. That was the promise at the beginning. I would fall into division and become fragmented, dwelling in awe that not a thing in this world could be apart from me. Because how could I be apart from something that I'm going to influence? Because all things by a law divine in one another's being mingled. If I'm not penetrating you now, I couldn't see you. You couldn't hear me if I did not penetrate you and you penetrate me. So all things by a law divine in one another's being mingled. So when I am lifted up, I take with me my entire universe, my whole vast world, knowing that every one that is now shadowed in that world will have a repetition of the same experiences. For one fell into division, and then resurrected into unity, bringing all back together into the one. So in her case, I can't tell you how thankful I am that she shared it with me. That she could now actually feel that the robbery, which seemed at the moment of a shock, she lost a tape recorder, she lost this, all the movable objects. And then came the settlement from the insurance company for $2,050, which replaced these with the new ones, all the light ones, and enough to put on the roof. and then still left over. So, Father, forgive them. Yes, the thieves of thieves. It's yourself pushed out anyway. Here someone is tonight accused for stealing maybe what? A little cup or a saucer. And yet the bank where I bank, United California Bank, they're still looking for the internal thief who stole $50 million last year from their subsidiary in Basel, in Switzerland. $50 million. And they know it all is on the inside. It can only be on the inside by trusted employees. They think they can bring it down to six trusted employees. They can't quite put their fingers on it because in Switzerland there are all these strange hidden accounts. But they are missing $50 million. So someone goes into the bank and holds it up and gets $1,000 and we balloon the whole thing. The other thing is hush-hush. Here is a bank in Illinois a few months ago, close to $7 million, and they still can't quite put their finger on how it happened on the inside. No one came in and robbed them. And we speak of the little shoplifting on the outside. And the poor little girl goes off to jail, or the little boy goes off to jail. I'm not condoning it. If you could stop the investment from the inside, your dividends would jump from its present little 3% or 4% to 20%. If you could only stop it from the inside. All things happen really, in the true sense of the word, from the inside. So that every so-called act in the outer world that seems so, well, a cause in itself. May I tell you, every natural effect has a spiritual, imaginal cause, and not a natural. A natural cause only seen. It's a delusion of what? The fading memory. Man can't quite remember. Pardon me. Luckily, she remembered when Ray said we could use and need a new roof. But it will cost $1,000, and so that's put into the future. She remembered when he complained the new shoes were hurting. In her mind's eye, she revised it instantly, at that moment. The roof and the shoes. When she worked on her machine, she revised it. It was adequate, but she said, I have a new machine, sewing machine. And putting the heavy tape recorder away, she wanted a new one that was light of weight, and she revised it, and she got, in her mind's eye, a lightweight new tape recorder. Then she goes home one day to find the house had been robbed. She had carried insurance, so she bought in the insurance, and here they paid her the $2,000, which replaced all these things in a new way. So I tell you, this story is the greatest story ever told. There's no story like it. But Christianity needs forever and forever to be saved from secular history. It is not secular history. It's the history of your own wonderful human imagination. God and your own imagination are one. They're one. You are an immortal being. You cannot die. Because you're all imagination. And when you actually know it from experience, then you can wipe your tears. Nothing can pass away. You may not see them with a mortal eye, touch them with a mortal hand, but they are in a world just as real as this. Just as real. Continuing the journey until they reach that moment in time when they are resurrected. And then the scattered body begins to be collected, and they're gathered together into one. So one must be all, and comprehend within himself all things, both great and small. And you are that one that actually fell. And then, in falling, you became fragmented. You became divided into the unnumbered parts, and each seems to be independent of you as you look out on it. You're only looking out on yourself pushed out. And your whole vast world must make real your unknowing imaginal acts, or your knowing imaginal acts. I ask you to trust this teaching. Believe in your imaginal acts. You may not see it tonight or tomorrow, but believe in it. Actually assume the most glorious thing in the world for yourself or any aspect of yourself. Trust it. And that imaginal act, if it takes 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 of your projected selves, will use them to make that thing become real in your world. As she said in her letter to me, you may call it imagination, or some may call it thought. But this I do know, having remembered what I did last year, I can say it does produce reality. As I've told you time and time again, imagining creates reality. That all the objective facts of the world are produced through imagination. There isn't a thing that you can name in this world that wasn't first imagined. But you can veto it the minute you imagine it. You can say, as she could have said, we can't afford it, and stop it. She didn't say we can't afford the $1,000 for the roof. She saw the roof, and it was new. But she didn't see the robbery. That's the means. Now, let me turn you now to the 55th chapter of Isaiah. My ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than yours. This is the chapter where you're told, my word shall not return unto me void, but it must accomplish that which I purpose and prosper in the thing for which I sent it. So my ways are higher than your ways. Don't concern yourself with how it's going to be done. For the same voice who spoke these words said this in the 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy, the 39th verse. I, even I, am he. I kill. I make alive. I wound. I heal. I do all these things, and none can deliver out of my hand. He's playing all the parts. And if one is basically inclined to steal, he will use it to produce the necessary means to get the money to put on the roof. So she comes home, and there was a robbery. All the things have been replaced with new ones and better ones as she desired them. At the moment it seemed to be a shock, but she set the whole thing up in motion, for she's the one who spoke those words. I kill and I make alive. I wound and I heal. And none can deliver out of my hands. For the Spirit of God and the human imagination are one. And there is nothing but God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. And so if all things are made by him, is there a thief in the world? He's playing that part. Is there a so-called hero in the world? He's playing that part. A coward? He's playing that part. He's playing every part in the world, and it all adds up to produce the unseen imaginal acts of men. So you are alone, and you think no one sees me, and this means nothing. It's only my imagination. And you carry on your lovely imaginal act. And so that's it. Not knowing that you're actually producing tomorrow's effects in this world. And when it comes into the world, that natural effect has an unseen, invisible, imaginal act as cause, and not a natural cause. A natural cause only seen. It is a delusion. Delusion of what? Of your fading memory. You don't remember when you did it. So when confronted with your own harvest, you can't quite believe it. You can't remember when you did anything that could actually be like this. I didn't rob myself. I never thought for one moment of robbery to get the money. No, but I did see the whole thing done. And there are thieves in the world, all over the world, and they're all played by God. There is nothing but God. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. Now let me find that actor, because God only acts, and He is in all existing beings or men. Well, I'm a man. I've got to find that actor. For the thing that I see reflected in the mirror when I shave in the morning is a mask. That's persona. Now, who is wearing that mask? I answer, if you say, Neville, I turn around, and I say, yes, here I am. But who is the being that is there? I am. That's my real name. But the mask is called Neville. But I will say, I am Neville. So the wearer of the mask called Neville responds. That being in that mask, behind that mask that no one sees, is God. And now the whole vast Christian will celebrate this victory of God, that He actually died, literally died. But God's first attribute is mercy. And God turned death into sleep. And then rose the sexes to work and to weep. And so all the sexes rose as masks. When God died, He buried Himself in humanity and died. And then His first attribute, mercy, turned it into sleep. That's what Blake meant when he said eternity exists. And all things in eternity, independent of creation, which was an act of mercy. That was the merciful act, to turn death into sleep. And God is dreaming this dream. One day He will awake. And when He awakes, He resurrects. And then He gathers into His own being all His scattered beings. So all are gathered together. When I depart this time, may I tell you, I am taking everything in the universe with me. And when I am lifted up, I will raise all unto me. Read it in the 12th chapter of John. Not one can be left, because all things exist in the human imagination. But it's not raised up until He who is scattered is awakened to unity. And then He draws into His one being all that was scattered. So there's sin, His fall into division, and His resurrection to unity. His fall into the generation of decay and death, and His regeneration into the generation of the resurrection from the dead. So when He actually is raised from the dead, He gathers all into His own being. And they're all with Him. No matter where He goes, He has His whole vast world raised up, hasn't left one behind Him. But everyone scattered in the world will have a reproduction of that drama within themselves. So what is now being dramatized as a memorial this week, for this is really a memorial. This is simply a great memory, a remembrance of what God has already accomplished. And so they're perpetuating it through Good Friday, then comes the burial on Saturday, then comes the resurrection on Sunday. But the whole thing is done. It's all done. Only to be repeated in the individual, and then the individual, who is a semen scattered, becomes the unit, and he draws his vast world unto himself, and he is resurrected. So the one becomes the many, and then the many become the one. So whenever one is raised, he takes his whole vast world with him, even though it seems to be left behind. And every aspect that it seemingly is behind becomes the unit, and then it raises up. So one must be all. That is the story of the Christian mystery. One must be all. So the first cry on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. And they do not know what they do. They go blindly on under compulsion, executing the unseen imaginal acts of humanity. And they move under compulsion. To pick this up, I told the story. I was severely criticized for it by a lady at a dinner party one night when Fred Bales, who is now gone from this world, and he gave a party at the Ambassador Hotel. And I had told this story about 2 weeks before, and one of his great, I would say, contributors, who would come and always write huge big check at the end of a year or end of a month to keep that going. And she was most critical that night. As I said, I didn't feel well that night at all. And she said, I can't quite understand how you could take the platform, an audience of 2,600, 1,000 who could not get in, they're all overflowing, at the Fox Wilshire, and tell what you told concerning your wife. That was my first wife. I told a simple story to explain that everything in this world must be forgiven. I don't care what it is. When I met the girl who now bears my name, who is the mother of my daughter, the very first moment I met her, I knew she is going to be my wife. She didn't know it, but I knew it. I said to myself, she doesn't know it, but she is going to be my wife. We sailed for Barbados 6 months later, and she met my mother, met my family, met them all. They all loved her. That was back in 1936. In New York City, because of some archaic law, it's now passed, you couldn't get a divorce unless she was insane for 7 years, or adultery. And that's all. The Orthodox Christian churches have sewed the whole thing up so that it made life miserable and made everything simply, a burden to all. But when I met her, I had just such an entangled background. And here's New York City, the most archaic city in the world concerning its laws. I went to bed and slept as though I were happily married to the girl who now bears my name. I did not have any physical emotion with her. Just she was sleeping there and I am here, and it's blissful. I did that for 1 solid week. Then comes a telephone call from the court one morning, telling me that I must come down to this federal court on Tuesday morning. Well, I was groggy. It was early in the morning. And in those days, I didn't rise as early as I do now. And so I just said, all right, and I hung up. After I hung up, I wondered, what on earth is all this nonsense? What have I done? I must be in court. I haven't received the summons. Not a thing. I must be in court. Well, on Tuesday morning that I'm supposed to be there, I made no effort to go there. And about 9:30, the phone rang. It's the court. And they say to me, you're supposed to be here in court this morning. You meet at 10. And I said, what on earth am I supposed to be in court for? They said, well, it happens that your wife is arrested. And we thought maybe you could throw some light on the reason for her arrest. That's why we're asking you to come down. Well, I wasn't shaved. I simply threw myself into the clothes and off I went to a taxi down to the court. And I got there just as they were bringing her in. Man whispered into the three judges, one judge's ear, that I was in the audience. The judge asked me to take you don't have to swear, but will you please take the stand and throw some light on the behavior of your wife? She tells me you've been separated now for almost 14 years. I said, yes. Is it a religious reason why you've been separated? I said, no, none whatsoever. We knew we were wrong the very first day we got married. We knew it was completely a failure. Right away. Then he read the case. She was picked up for shoplifting. They went to her home and found other things in her home. I said, what do you say for this? I said, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that really she is a shoplifter. As far as I'm concerned, she just moved under compulsion, taking into consideration her age. She's 8 years my senior, and she's passing through a certain emotional state. And do be lenient. We have a son, and he lives with me. And I don't want anything to happen to his mother that would cast any shadow on his life. He is a wonderful boy. He is in my charge by law. He is in my home, lives with me, and I don't want anything to happen to her that in any way would reflect upon my son. The judge said, in all my years on the bench, I have heard no plea by one for another who has every reason in this world to get her committed, because that in any other state would be enough for what he wants to the divorce. And yet he pleads for her. He sentenced her to 6 months. And then on my plea, he suspended it. She met me on the outside and said, Neville, that was a very decent thing to do. Give me my papers. She knew I was looking for them. And my dancing partner told her I was looking for her to serve the papers and therefore to be scarce and move out of New York City. So she did. But she had to commit the act, and they had to call me and ask me to throw light upon that. How could I condemn her? Who was the actual cause of her shoplifting? I slept as though I were blissfully married to the girl who now bears my name. And I had to get the evidence. I had to get some reason to bring the action. And here my wife actually gave me the papers. I said, I don't have the papers with me. She said, I'm driving home to your place right now, and you can give me the papers. That's illegal, to serve your own papers. But she drove up to my hotel where I lived. I went to my room, came down to the lobby, and gave her the papers. Did my own serving. Now that is an illegal thing in this world. But then I got my divorce in the city of New York. Then I could marry the girl who now bears my name. And when I told that, I told it only to tell people of that one word, the first word on the cross, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They're all moving under compulsion. And the unseen causation is hidden from the world. They do not know who is treading in the winepress. And I was treading in the winepress to be happily married to a girl who was not then engaged to me, because I couldn't be engaged to her under the circumstances. And then my wife behaved in such a manner that it made it real and natural for me to do what I did. How can I blame her? So the first word on the cross, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They have to do what they do. I have to fall into division and fragment my being into the unnumbered parts called humanity, and then rise into unity and gather all my scattered members together and rise as God himself. That's the story. It is God who fell and God who rises. So I know from my own experience nothing dies. Those who have not had the experience here, all right, they're restored in a world that is terrestrial just like this. And they continue their journey until that moment in time when they're resurrected. And resurrection is resurrection into unity. And the outpictured world, the whole vast universe, is himself pushed out, is gathered together then. And they move up. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto me. See it? This is the mystery of which we speak here night after night. You're not some tiny little thing that's pushed out. You are the whole. One must be all. And the day will come, you will find that you really are the all. So not one person in the universe could be outside of you when you are resurrected. Because as you are raised up, you raise all this. And each would have the experience of being raised up, and all, eventually, will be the one. And in that day, there shall be one. His name one, as we are told in Zechariah. But Blake tells it so beautifully in his dream of 9 nights, called Valor, or the 4 Zoes. And then he tells a story of the falling into division. And when they're all gathered together, this one man they call Jesus. And they in him, and he in them, live in perfect harmony in Eden, the land of life. For you are the Lord Jesus Christ, whose resurrection they're going to celebrate this coming Sunday. You tell that to the priest, the Sabbath. Tell that to any minister. Because they are sound asleep. They do not know who the Lord Jesus Christ is. I tell you, the Lord Jesus Christ is buried in you. And he is your own wonderful human imagination. That's the Lord Jesus Christ. And when he is raised in you, you will raise all in this universe with you. That is the story. So I want to thank my friend for sharing with me her experience and being big enough to remember. If man could only remember the imaginal acts. She remembered when the roof needed repairs or a new one, and the cost was excessively high for them at the moment. She remembered her husband complaining about the pain the new shoes caused, the weight of the tape recorder, and then working on the machine, the sewing machine, and it was adequate, it was good, but she would like a new one. And then came out of the nowhere a robbery, and took all these movable objects. And then came the insurance that sent the check for $2,000 odd. That replaced all the movable objects and enough for the roof and much, much over. So she can actually say, forgive them, Father, those who took it. Did they not do her a favor? And yet they are thieves in their own eyes, and thieves in the eyes of society, and they are. You know who played the part? God. And you know who actually made them do what they did? The lady who wrote me the letter. Now she knows the words in that 32nd chapter of Deuteronomy. I, even I, am he, and there is no God beside me. I kill, and I make alive. I wound, and I heal. And there is none that can deliver out of my hand. No matter what happens, if we only had the memory, we could trace it to a forgotten imaginal act on our part.